Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Shamirio. Thank you for stopping by my channel. We are recapping episode 9 of And Just Like That, the Sex and the City reboot. Episode 9 is titled No Strings Attached. If you want to hear my recap and my thoughts on the episode, then please keep watching. Thank you. All right, I will start this episode off, or this recap off, by saying I stand corrected. I was very much ready to say what I thought was going to happen on episode 9, and none of what I thought was going to happened in regards to Miranda and Che. The ladies are lunching. Carrie mentions her do-over date with the guy from the app, the one who threw up on her shoes. Miranda tells them that she wants them to come to Brooklyn because she's working on a women's shelter with Naya. I don't recall ever hearing them mention this in previous episodes, but I easily could have missed it. But she wants them to come and volunteer and paint and make the shelter look nice. So they agree to do it. Carrie tries to get out of it by saying she wants to write a check. And Miranda's like, you can't be the white woman who writes a check. Like, you have to come and get your hands dirty. So there's that. Charlotte tells them that she thinks that she's in menopause. Her storyline this whole episode is basically dealing with being the mother of a teenage girl and helping her deal with the joys of womanhood and periods and stuff. So that's pretty much the start and stop of Charlotte's storyline this whole episode. One thing I want to point out, do y'all notice now how they blatantly have black and brown people in the background? Like, not only are they obviously in the foreground, but when they're out at dinners and diners and lunches and walking down the street and in parks, you can clearly see black and brown people. Again, I appreciate the efforts. It's just like, you gonna get this melanin. I appreciate it. It's like it doesn't go unnoticed, but it's almost blatant. It's not almost, whatever. So they got extras of color in the background. All right, Lisette, the inconsiderate girl who lives downstairs, she comes up and she asks Carrie to wear a ring because, as previously mentioned, she is a jewelry designer. She's hoping that Carrie wearing one of her rings will get her some sales. So she asks Carrie to wear her ring, and then she's like, oh, she notices her wedding ring. Carrie's still wearing it, and she's like, where's your husband? Da, da, da. Carrie tells her what's going on. So we see that Carrie is still wearing her wedding ring. Charlotte is having a day mitzvah for Rock, or she's trying to have a day mitzvah for Rock instead of a bar mitzvah. That's the other part of Charlotte's storyline this episode. Miranda and Che are at dinner, and Che's famous, so some of some of their fans comes up and wants selfies, and Miranda's like, I'll take the picture. So they're like, are you famous too? She says no. And she's like, I'm just the girlfriend. And Che kind of gives her a look like, okay. She doesn't say anything. They take the picture. The fans have a very awkward moment where they start naming people that Che slept with, but they go on about their merry way. Carrie and Seema are in line at a club. We later learn that it's Seema's birthday. She's 54. And Carrie is asking Seema if she should still be wearing her ring. And Seema's basically like, you have to make that call. Like, who am I to tell you whether or not you should still be wearing your ring? They do not get into the club, but they do later go out to eat and have cake or whatever. And Seema's just talking about all the things that she thought she had, more so love related at her age, but she doesn't. And Carrie's like, your guy is out there. So we have our fingers crossed for Seema, and it appears as though she may have met someone this episode, some guy she saw outside of the event or outside of the women's shelter. So we'll see what happens with that. I do want Seema to find somebody. All right, Carrie is outside waiting for her date, only to tell him that she doesn't actually want to go on the date, which I thought was weird. She said she wanted to tell him in person rather than texting him. I would have rather you text me, because the guy shows up in a cab. So how much money did that cab cost? Like, I done paid cab fare to come meet you, only for you to tell me that you don't want to meet with me. Girl, if you don't send a text, then keep it moving. But I guess I can see the intent behind it. And she shows up looking relatively nice. Does she not have sweatpants? And jeans. Anyway, so she shows up to tell him that even though they're scheduled to go on a date, they both showed up to the location where they said they were going to go on a date. She doesn't want to go on the date because prior to meeting Peter, I think his name is, she was practicing taking off her ring, just seeing what it would feel like. And instead of taking off her ring, she ends up putting on Big's ring. So kind of a little bit of a step back. And so I guess it kind of all hit her that she's not really ready to date, or, you know, maybe she feels like wearing my husband's ring while I'm trying to date just doesn't mesh. So the cute guy, Peter, he tells her that he still has his wife's voicemail on his phone. And so they're both kind of going through their we lost a loved one thing. So apparently this is strike 2, because again, strike 1 was you puking on the him puking on the shoes. Strike 2 is I showed up, but I don't actually want to go on the date. And he's like, all right, well, you know, that's strike 2. One more strike and we're out. So that's how things are going with Peter. I don't know about you, but I don't like it if who pops up at somebody's house without calling or texting or seeing if you're home or if you're busy or whatever. Well, apparently Miranda does. Miranda pops in on Che with cookies. It's super awkward, and that's seeing that preview is what made me think that Che was going to have someone in their house. But I guess that would be too obvious. So I fell for whatever. So anyway, it's really awkward. You can kind of tell that she's, you know, Che is kind of like, you know, you should have called, you know, whatever. But Che is there alone. And she was like, I was writing, or they were like, I was writing. I wish you would have said something. So Miranda's embarrassed. She's doesn't storm out, but they're having, was it just me or was that conversation loud? Like, I'm like, y'all in the hallway talking loud as fuck. Anyway, so Miranda's embarrassed. She starts to leave. They're having this very loud conversation in the hallway. Che tells her that Miranda is not allowed to limit their situationship into typical relationship tropes. Because she's like, if this were, you know, if you were a guy, I would never just show up unannounced with cookies. You know, who do I think I am? Da, da, da. So Che is telling her, don't do that. That's not what this is. And then she says, we're not dating. You're not my girlfriend. We're just getting to know each other. Ouch. But then Che says, you're the only person that I'm sleeping with for now. She could have took the for now off. Like, I just don't think this is going to end up well for Miranda. Maybe I know I'm cynical, but I don't see it ending well. So it's the day of the painting of the women's shelter. Steve and Bday show up to paint. Steve says everybody's painting in pairs, and Steve says he's going to paint with Carrie because Carrie wore overalls. Okay, and Brady's going to paint with his girlfriend, who we don't see. Charlotte shows up with Lisa, aka LTW, aka NAP, Nicole Ari Parker, and they both have their kids with them. So the whole families are showing up to paint. And Lisa and Naya meet for the first time, which I didn't realize that their paths hadn't crossed up until this point. So they meet for the first time, which was cool. Why the hell is Carrie painting in heels? Ma'am, you're going to wear overalls to paint, which is smart, but then you wear heels to paint. Whatever. As I previously mentioned, she's paired up with Steve to paint. So then Steve asks her, how long had she known about Miranda and Che? Did she introduce them? You know, he's just basically trying to figure out what happened, because just the last episode, his whole world got ripped from under him. So he's trying to get a little bit of clarity. So the conversation gets super uncomfortable. Carrie ends up taking a step back, and she steps into paint in her heels. So she goes to wash her heels off, and then Big's ring comes off because she was using a Band-Aid, I guess, so it would fit better or something. I don't know why she just didn't put it on a necklace like she did with Aiden's ring, but shade. So anyway, the ring comes off. It goes in that little U part of the sink, and Steve is able to recover it, which I am glad, because old girl was toe up about that ring, understandably so. So as we know, Naya and Andre are having issues with fertility. Apparently, Andre really wants a kid. I don't know that he articulated that to Naya. But there's a moment where he sees Lisa's husband doing some grade A parenting, as he says, with the kids in their painting. And I guess it just gets him all up in his feelings, and he just realizes that he really wants a kid. But what I think is happening as more time goes on and Naya is hanging out with Miranda, she meets Charlotte this episode, and Charlotte's talking about basically having a teenager with a menstrual cycle and having to deal with that. And she basically is like, ain't nobody got time for that, which I am with Naya. I hear the stories of the people with the little humans, and I'm like, none of that sounds great, but that's just me. So anyway, Naya doesn't seem to be about that parenting life. Andre does. And so now they're kind of having this, are we going to last if we've gone through all these attempts to have kids unsuccessfully? You apparently really want one, me not so much. Crossroads. They're at a crossroads. Once Steve and Carrie reconvene after the recovery of the ring, he tells her that he's never going to take his wedding ring off despite Miranda leaving him for Che. He says, till death do us part. Maybe he thinks Miranda will come back, or maybe he doesn't care and just doesn't care to move on. I think that's kind of weird, but I've never been married. So there's that. Eventually, at the end of the episode, Carrie concludes that she is in fact ready to take her ring off. She also takes Big's ring off. She puts them both in a jewelry box and puts it in the closet. And then she texts Peter Puke guy and asks him if he's up for strike 3. So she's still trying to be hopeful and moving on with her dating. So good luck to them. But that's where we are. That's episode 9. I'm kind of shocked that I was wrong. And if this season is going like any of the other shows that are out there now, they're only going to be 10 episodes. This is episode 9. So in the event that next Thursday is the season finale, I'm very curious to see how they will wrap it up. And I'm curious to know how long do they have a vision in mind for the series? Meaning, how long do you plan to do this? When Insecure, I remember when Issa said she started Insecure, she knew from the jump that it was going to be 5 seasons. I'm curious, do they have that same vision and just like that, where they just kind of seeing how the fans will react and then take it from there? Do they already have a plan? Obviously, I don't know. Oh, and just a really quick thing. Charlotte thinks she's going through menopause, and then we learn that she gets a flash period. I don't know what that is. I'm sure I'll find out eventually, or maybe I'll Google it. Probably not. But she gets a flash period at the end, so maybe she's going through menopause, maybe she's not, say. But that's episode 9's recap. So let me know your thoughts below, and thank you for watching. Bye.